Welcome back to the big issue, discussing the partial lockdown of the country announced by the president that will take effect from Monday, March 30, 2021 a.m. Doing so with Dr. Accra and Kumasi, a health economist from the University of Ghana, Dr. Addo, board chair of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, himself a medical doctor, Addo, business owner, he says, and private legal practitioner Franklin Kujo is also around. He will enter the conversation. And a couple of messages coming in. Let me take those before Dr. Okoboy completes, and then I go back to Dr. Accra and Kumasi on the matter. So, quite a few messages this morning. People are worried. Patrick from Garu in the Upper East region says, this is a poor initiative. People within such places that are locked down will move out of the areas, and if care is not taken, will cause explosions in other places. The restrictions should have been done with immediate effect. Italy gave a grace period to lock down the north, which forced people to move and settle at the southern parts, causing the uncontrollable situation they have now. Good morning. Evans from Bawe says, please, the president did not mention the port. Does that mean our ports are also in lockdown? I need education on this as I need to clear my car. Well, the clearing of your car might have to wait, Evans. Okay, so staff of banks and financial institutions, are they exempted? I didn't hear or see them in the list. Well, those are part of the clarifications we will try and get from Kojo Ponkroma when we put him on the line in a bit. A lot of people have asked me this question with regards to the banks. Nana Insia Opoku Esquire says, good morning. I want you to inquire from the minister if lawyers are exempted from. Yes, if you listen to the president, an esquire, if you are genuinely an esquire and you listen to the president, you are a member of the judiciary, are you not? So certainly you are exempted. Godfred, the president's lockdown decision is a step in the right direction, but once again he made another mistake by saying the lockdown will start on Monday. He has just opened the floodgates of infections to other regions. Because anyone who has anywhere else to live outside of Accra and Kumasi will leave before the lockdown. Just now, someone I know in Accra is asking me if he can come and live with me in Koforidua. We are finished in Koforidua. Mukaila Jose Adia from Kerry says, so why are we agitating and confused about the president announcing a restriction? In any case, even if the president locks the entire nation down, isn't it to our advantage? What will he gain if he locks down the nation or puts us in an uncomfortable situation? Okay. Now, Delanyo Agbe says, the president's announcement of a lockdown is welcome. However, little is said about providing social services such as food and shelter to the homeless and the working population. Social services is essential in this crucial time to fight off this pandemic. Well, like I said, it's important that we listen carefully in this period. So, Delanyo, if you listen carefully to what the president said, some of these things have been factored into the conversation. The creation of a 1 billion Ghana cedi fund, the use of other social interventions in there. So all these things have been factored in. Let me put it that way. And again, let me use this platform to plead, especially on the sharing of all kinds of things on WhatsApp. Not all the information is accurate. Stop sharing some of these things. And also, when you are reading, read from official sources. That is where the information is. Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Okoboy, you can continue.
Yeah, let me say that, you see, there is, in medicine, we have what we refer to as the gold standard in practice. So for every procedure, there is the excellent method or rule, but based on where you are, you might not be able to execute your operation according to the gold standard because of some peculiar challenges. So if a particular surgery must be done, maybe using an MRI, but you don't have an MRI and you are doing it with the help of a CT scan, we say you are doing your best based on the local conditions. So the gold standard for halting a virus, which is like someone say electricity no get leg, it be cable way it be carrier. This virus too no get leg, it be human beings they carry. So the gold standard or magic bullet based on how the virus moves is simple. It's to halt movement to ground zero. That's the gold standard. But you don't make the mistake of picking a global standard and applying to your content without a fair appreciation of your setting. Even when you're being trained as a doctor, you are told that the gold standard is not, medicine is global, but its practice is local. So my point is simple. I am for a lockdown because of the principle, 2 ground zero. But luckily for me, I say so because I am not the one managing or in charge of leading the crisis fight. The one who is leading, like the president, must appreciate and be told the other options on the table on how to reduce those challenges that can even threaten the lockdown to the barest minimum. And let me give you an example. Classically, you do a lockdown to slow down transmission or possibly take it out. But ultimately, you are trying to avoid deaths, loss of lives. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
If our curve will last 4 months, curve meaning this corona episode in Ghana, and the deaths that can be projected with the help of Dr. Nkrumah will be, let's say, 50 deaths. If a zero restriction, meaning you've done a total lockdown, you've restricted movement to zero, because of your setting, will lead to 100 deaths, then you must really be interested in the cost-benefit analysis. Because your intervention can lead to loss of lives as well. A zero lockdown, some of the deaths they've recorded in Spain might be due genuinely to morbidities, that's health problems to those who died. Some also can be traced to the lockdown intervention. Because maybe if it had not been a lockdown, access to a relative, access to some form of help would have come easier. In fact, just some 4 days ago, my brother, my secretary in the office, Parliament, had to spend 1 hour looking for food. He couldn't get it. So if you have, let's say, a diabetic who is trying to access an essential like food, and because of a total lockdown, there's a delay, he can go into hypoglycemia and die. So the point is that it's not just about going for the magic bullet, which solves all problems, but it's to also consciously make sure that all the things that come with your magic bullet have been settled as much as possible. And I feel sad, well, not sad, I'm not too excited when I hear people say, why do you put the economy above people? People think that, okay, if you say some should go to work or they should sell or something, it's because you are concerned about the economy. But really, it's not about the economy above people. It's people above people. And I'll explain. If someone must spend 1 hour during the day outside to get what they will feed to be alive, when you are considering such a person, it's not about their economic activity. It's really about their life. You understand what I'm saying? Why would President give an arrangement, an intervention, and say that those who want to go to public toilets should go? Because if you go to the developed world, about 97% of the population have access to toilet facilities. Tap that flows through, water that flows through your taps. You do a minimum about 93%. But in Ghana here, you are doing less than 40% in terms of water that is coming. I'm not talking about treated water, but conveniently you open your taps and then you flow. When I was growing up, we had to step out of our rooms before we bath. Now, in my own house, I can bath in the house. But in taking decisions, there's something they call intrinsic bias. You must be careful not for it to affect you. Where you assume your setting is the setting of all. So, really, I think for now, look, the first time China announced this COVID-19 globally, officially, was 7th of January 2020. Just less than 2 weeks, 21st of January, this country gave a circular through Ghana Health Service and Ministry of Health to all stations. I'm talking about the actions the state has taken. 2 weeks later, a national coordinating team was set up. Surveillance at the ports. That's when they brought the thermometer guns and all that. So you could see that we've been escalating our interventions according to the curve of the virus. And you have to forgive me, but no state can have enough preparation to get a hold of a virus on the day it broke. That's why it's called an outbreak. The levels at which it's occurring is more than what it normally does. So you try to escalate your measures to catch up with it. Some countries have caught up with the virus, like China. In fact, they are now going ahead of the virus. US has not caught up. They are chasing it. We have not caught up. We are fairly chasing it. But a few countries, South Korea, Singapore, have more or less got up. The point is that you don't necessarily judge yourself by the fact that the virus is ahead of you. You must judge yourself by the continuous escalation in terms of your measures to try and catch up with it. And I'm happy that as a state, we are continuously reviewing our steps, trying to catch up with the virus and go ahead. And there's one trait that the president has shown, which I'm very excited about. If you are leading any health, they have what they call public health emergency of international concern. There's a disease that is of global interest. Anytime you are leading such a fight against a condition that is considered as PHEIC, that's public health emergency of international concern, one trait you must show is tolerance to suggestions. You must not be rigid in your ways. This issue of going to test all those who have been traced, the contact tracing, and going back to March, I think 2nd or 3rd March, is born chiefly or largely out of the comments that have come from the public and all that some could have slipped in. It is refreshing because if you get rigid people managing this process, we can head for trouble. And that malleability or flexibility that the president and his advisors have shown is very good. Look, I would conclude with an assuring note. Kojo Nkrumah said that 30,000 people from the last 3rd March to now have come in. If you even have 10%, looking at the numbers we are getting from the 1,030, put it at 10%, that's 3,000 who are positive. Those who go through their curve, it's been over 2 to 3 weeks since March 3rd. I think it's going to be on 2 weeks. Those who have clinical symptoms, most of them, we should have been picking them now in our hospitals. The fact that we are not having severe cases, and all this is assumption or modeling, the fact that they've not reported to our hospitals is an indication that it's good we are going back to check. But like they did in US recently, you might check, but some might have it, go to the curve, recover, and not show anything at all. And that's why in New York, some 2-3 weeks ago, they said that even if you work in the hospital and you are not symptomatic, they will not test you for corona. Because that is what wipes out their consumables. To test you, they must wear their gowns, their PPEs and all that. They said they are slowing down on testing asymptomatic people because majority of them will get the condition, recover from the condition, heal from the condition, without even you knowing that they ever existed because of how the disease is. But I am also for mass testing. Testing more people can increase your numbers. But you're interested in 2 things. Are there people who were previously already there as part of the prevalence? Or they are, as a result of incidence levels, new active transmission? These are some of the things you must be.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Dr. Abraham, let me come down to you. I'm going through my messages, and one of the worries people have is the lack of instruction that come with this and the potential for that lack of instruction to rather lead to mass gatherings. So, for instance, today, whether we like it or not, markets are full. Transport yards are full. These are people who are leaving the areas that are supposed to be closed down to go to places that we think are not affected.
And the risk will shift.
Exactly. So, in the models that you have, do you factor in all these uncertainties based on the lack of clarity in instruction?
Okay, so thanks very much. I mean, the models that I have here are not those super, because once you do that, it becomes very difficult for you to model, because then you're dealing with very, very complex, very complex situations. But I think that the way I've thought through this, so I will take off from where he started. Yes, the instructions that have come, I told you, offset that. Back at home, I was applauding the president for doing what he did. People have said that this should have come earlier but my point is that, yes, whatever it is, it's come, so we should take on from there. But one of my worries is also the instructions. So the president did well by trying to mitigate the economic aspect with the virus. But what we need is good instructions. Now, I'll give a typical example. So, for instance, the markets, okay, we should be able to start, like, right from this morning. The communicators within the government and GHS, their duty should be to be on all the radio stations, assuring people that even though there is a lockdown, the market will be open. So Saturday, don't rush to the market. That is what is missing. So we are going to have people rush to the market, and if we are not careful, that rush activity itself may increase the transmission risk, which we are trying to push down. Remember, I told you that in my model, I assumed that these measures will push down the transmission rate by about 30%. Yeah. But if we have this sort of thing, it might not work. Secondly, in the same market, we need to probably give detailed guidelines. So, for instance, in the market, we have these market queens. If you take the market at the one at Tudu, or Agboblosi or whatever, these market queens know who sells what. So assuming you have about, say, 10 people who sell tomatoes, we could say that, okay, 2 people will come Monday, 2 people will come Tuesday, so that you reduce the number of people, and citizens are told this. I would have also expected that today or before this, the GPRTU would have been contacted. People would have been told that, look, even if you are from Accra and you are going to this place, we would want to check why you are going. Just to, we probably may not do it so strictly, but just by announcing that we are going to be checking, it will actually slow down people who would travel, okay, for no other reason. So I think that these are the other things that we probably should have. We need, and it's not too late. We can still come ahead and give detailed instruction. This morning, my wife just got up and said that, look, when I started praying early morning, I heard the president has shut down the country, and I said, oh, I listened to it. So we need to go to market. I said, don't worry, you don't have to go to market, because if you go to market today, you'll be putting yourself at a risk. Don't go. The market will be open. We will go to the market on Tuesday. This is the sort of things that I think should be going on. I mean, detailed education so that all of us will be at rest. The other issue too that I've not heard people looking at is probably the 1 billion that we've talked about. Okay. When people were saying that we should not lock down, because if we lock down, vulnerable people will suffer. The argument I made was that people aren't looking at the empirics. They are not looking at the data. And of course, in Ghana, oftentimes we make statements out of emotions. I mean, just take, I've done just random checks, okay? Just go to the ministries. Those people we are talking about are those who sell granules, who sell roasted plantain, ice water. Their economy is shut down to about 70%, because the point is that you are not there at the workplace anyway, okay, because their activity depends on your activity. If you go to the ports, they've reduced. If you go to the banks, they've reduced. So the economy is already gone down. And a way of caring about them is some sort of systematic shutdown like we've done, so that we can think about them. So for me, whichever way you look at it, but the issue is, how do we get to them? I probably would have thought that we would have put in place a system to get them registered. But it is not too late. We can work with the mobile companies, okay, to provide some sort of easy steps for them to register, and we can cross-check that data with their data through the NHIS and probably the voters register, because you would imagine that most of those people are either on the voters register or they are on the NHIS register. So we can cross-check with that and find out who they are. Then the next thing is, where would they get this help? I am thinking that we can begin to look at our relief agencies. We call, is it NADMO, right?
Yes.
Okay. How do we then begin to be, once they register, we can begin to pick up their GPS data and know where the majority of these ones are coming from, and quickly position NADMO in those places. Then they can go there for help. And one of the things I've said is that, look, this thing can be a blessing in disguise. Once we register those people, we can, after COVID-19, we rope them into the tax net, because now we have data on them. We know what they do and where they are, and so we can begin to start collecting little taxes from them. So basically, that's what I think.
Now, also, before I come back to Nipako for the consumer side of things, there are those who've also raised questions about the wide spectrum that this covers. Members of the executive, legislature, judiciary, production, distribution, marketing of food, beverages. There are a lot of small entities that fall under this, who employ a lot of people. Staff of VALCO, we can leave, environmental, road and railway construction workers, that's a lot of people. Fisher folk, that's a lot of people. Mining workers, what category? They work in confined areas. These are people who work in shafts. in very close together. And Doc, this concern also comes to you. Members of the security agencies assigned lawful duties, that's fine. But staff of electricity, water, telecommunications, e-commerce, and now all of these entities, electricity, water, telecommunications, have sub-agencies who are all linked to this. Staff of fuel stations. Fuel stations also, we have a lot. So are we dealing with, on my road alone, I have 6 fuel stations. So effectively, have we really shut down?
Okay, so you see, let's come back again to the model I showed you. I am assuming that if we didn't shut down, then in 30 days, we're going to have, we didn't do anything, in 30 days, we're going to have about almost 500 hospitalizations. Okay. Assuming what we have done is even a 30% depression, I'm not saying half, it's just a 30% depression, okay, it reduces the hospitalizations drastically. And remember what he said, you see, when you do this, what you are trying to do is to buy time.
Yes.
Okay, that's all you are trying to do. It's not that the infections won't come. They will come, but you are buying time. And when you buy time, it's good, because the point is that the people who get infected at a later stage, either 1, people would have developed immunity, or 2, we probably might have discovered a vaccine, and so they wouldn't have died. 3, you wouldn't have overwhelmed your public health to sort of drag off confidence, okay, within your public health. Because if you don't take care, what will happen is that at a point, the doctors will say, we are not going again for fear of our lives. Then what will happen is that the death will not be restricted to only COVID death, but even those who are already sick outside of COVID, and that mortality is already high when they had all the attention without COVID.
Do we even come to the hospital?
Okay, and so that's what you're trying to do. But let's come back to the list. You talk about electricity, water. I mean, if they are not there, this lockdown is inconsequential.
It's a death trap.
Do you get my point? I looked at the last time I was looking at somewhere in Nungwa. I think that's your constituency, is it?
It's
Nungwa. And the taps were open and people were rushing and fighting for water, like what I used to do when I was a kid, because we used to stay in this compound house and we used to go somewhere else to fetch water. And I was like, the people are not even concerned about social distancing. And my wife was like, what do you mean? If you don't have water to drink, what is social distancing? So those guys should work. Fuel, there's still got to be some movement. They have to be there. What we've got to understand is that if you pick an average fuel station, the pumps are well separated. Yes. But the point here is, again, for the government or for the GHS to come up with specific guidelines to help these people and make sure that the security agencies who are going to monitor this shutdown, they have those guidelines and they can enforce. When people know that the guidelines are there and people will come and enforce them, they will adhere to it. Then you talked about railway.
Yes, we have railway and mining, and then fisher.
I am not too sure about the railway workers, because
construction.
Okay,
road and railway construction.
Road and railway construction. I am not too sure about railway, because right now I don't know the amount of cargo that they cut. So I am not too sure about railway. But for road, I wouldn't say you should stop road, because we still need food. Okay, so that must be there. Then you talked about
you have mining.
Economy.
We can understand because of its importance to the economy.
To the economy. Okay, but of course, gold prices have already plummeted. So I'm not too sure about that.
But the issue also is, look at the areas they work in. If you are in the shaft, Dr. Koboy, if you are in the mining shaft with 30 people and with no air,
they are reducing. See, the thing is, we're reducing the numbers. You understand?
There's no perfect scenario.
Let not finish it.
Then you come to transportation. They talked about the trotro. For instance, what I'm actually looking at is that we have these is it ILO buses?
Yes.
Okay. We have a lot of them there. My guess would have been, my guess would have been to say, okay, let's flood the cities with these buses because we can control them. Okay. Then the trotro people, okay, who wants to work can be giving some of these buses to drive, okay, with a little bit of training, and work with the Trotro people so that if they are supposed to load, they are no longer going to load from their stations. They are loading from the government designated stations.
And even can reduce the numbers.
And in that case, the numbers can reduce. And here we must come up with also specific instructions to guide people.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Accra and Kumasi. Let me take a couple of messages and then we'll take a quick break. We'll hear from Dr. Addo Boy. Nikwaku, forgive me, I'm deferring
go on,
specifically because he is in a lot of the meetings. Let me take a couple of messages. Awudiye Bernard from Medina says, I stand by my words that the Ghanaian citizens should not panic over COVID-19. The only thing we need to know about COVID is to stay calm and follow safety measures. Again, knowing how the military and the police operate in extraordinary times like this, what form of explanation or method can one use when going to a public toilet to answer nature's call or buy essential goods? And kudos to you. Greetings to you and Fred Jabano. I would hear the only person who greets my producer. Good morning, Godfred and team. May I seize this opportunity to thank the President for taking the bold step to protect us all from this deadly virus. Let me see. Please permit me to also make this appeal to the President and also assure him that this order, although very good by all accounts, will be violated, especially in places like Ewutu Senya East. Why? Because for the past 2 weeks, I've been screaming on top of my voice that there is no water flowing in this area. I sent a message to Bernard to thank you for raising the issue with the Ghana water, but the sad news is that the water only flowed for 6 hours and stopped. How can I stay home for 2 weeks? Please tell Dr. Okoboy to add his voice for this plea since he's in government. As for how Akumsi, our MP, whose house is only 5 minutes walk from mine, the least said, the better. We will not stay home without water. This is Darrell Alan Tego. Very long message, but I have read it for you. Good morning. I think the government should embark on a compulsory COVID-19 testing for all workers at the Kotoka International Airport and also neighboring companies. I don't want to cause fear and panic, but I personally think some of the port handlers are already infected with the virus, even though clear symptoms have not been shown. This is Frank sending the message from the airport. Good morning. This is Farouk from Tamale North. I think the lockdown is necessary. We have no choice but to follow. Good morning, Dr. Koboy. I am Prince from Tema. My wife is supposed to resume at Konfanot at Kath from her maternity leave in April. We have requested for a transfer to Tema General Hospital. With this lockdown, is there any way we can get her to resume at TGH instead? You're asking the wrong person. So we need Dr. Aban, Mr. Alexander Aban or Mr. Kukwajima. Walanyo in Akwetia says, a partial lockdown is quite disturbing with the layout structures, but having no option is also good for our protection against the widespread nature of the disease. Okay, the second part of a message I will not read. Okay, so these are some of the messages that have come through. Let me go to... I have a lot of messages. Good morning. What happened to the Ghanaian professor in charge of COA FS? While the disease was just in China, he was all over the media. If indeed his medication works, I think the government should assist him. Please ask my MP how many ventilators we have bought, or how many people are preparing to buy, or how many we are preparing to buy within this period. Godfred, we need to speak to market women on the price of commodities. That is also important. They have decided to hike prices, and it is not because the goods are not in season. Gari was being sold for 7 Ghana cedis. At Ashayama market, they are now selling it for 30 Ghana cedis. We are really stressed, and we don't need this from the market women. This is an upset Mauli from Tema. We'll take another break. When we return. We'll take responses from Dr. Koboy and also comments from Kadila Nikwaku Samuado. Welcome back to the big issue, and you can keep sending in your messages. 0549-986-996, 0549-986-996. That's our WhatsApp line on Twitter. You can send to @City973. The hashtag is the big issue, or you can send to Godfred Akutoboafo, also on Twitter with the same hashtag, the big issue. We're also streaming live on Facebook, so you can send your questions and your comments there. Dr. Koboy and Nikwaku, let me come to you now. I'll go to Dr. Koboy first before Nikwaku. But, Doc, I've seen a lot of questions also being asked around how the kind of information being provided to the security services when this comes into effect. Because if you look at other countries and what is happening there, there's a lot of abuse happening. Yesterday I was monitoring the situation in Likoni, in Kenya, for instance, where there's a curfew from 7 p.m. and soldiers started lashing people at 5 p.m. using their own clock to deal with, just to abuse people. And we are in a country where our security agencies have a penchant for excessive use of force sometimes. What kind of communication is happening? Because somebody's asked the question, if I'm going to the public toilet and I meet a policeman, and he says, where is your proof?
There's no curfew. Let's see.
I think when you are coming out with an intervention, or you're trying to implement a law, you must do well to increase the sensitivity of people.
Yes.
Like to say, what's the word? To do some sensitization.
Yeah.
Because compliance, it's in your interest not to use force to get compliance.
Yeah.
You want it to come willingly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because when force must help you to get compliance sufficient levels, it comes with a huge cost and it can backfire.
Tension is already there.
Yes. So let me say that that's why I suspect some of the exemptions were made. Because those are exemptions that come with survival. Mm-hmm. If you have to get food to eat, you don't care if a soldier is holding a gun. Yeah. Your body tells you, your mind tells you that if you don't do this, you die. So I think the exemptions have a way of helping to raise the compliance levels.
Okay.
Now, Doc said something interesting, that we have to let people know some of the things we can do. We are allowed to do even in the midst of all this. One classical one is that we can go to the market and get food.
Yeah.
You can get fuel in your car, so that if there's an emergency, you can go to the pharmacy. You can visit access the courts and all that if it's very.
I still need clarification on the banking situation.
Well, I think I'll come to that place. Now, look, there is a principle behind all this. The principle is simple. It's the principle of limited movement, knowing how the virus operates. So personally, you must also get the principle so that you help yourself. I have talked to people who have been in self-quarantine for the past 2 weeks because they appreciate the principle. They've scaled down their movements. I talked to one very big entrepreneur in this country. He owns one of the biggest companies in Ghana. And although he holds a Ghanaian passport, his dad and granddad came from outside this country, from Europe. He said, Doc, this is serious. You guys better lock down, try to restrict movement to the lowest possible movement. And it's like, what makes him say so is that because he's white, when people see him, they start running. People think that it is a foreigner who carries you understand? But the point he made was very simple, that limit movement as much as possible. And he told me he's in self-quarantine. Nobody has asked him, but he understands the principle. So the state more or less gives us guidelines how to restrict movement to the barest minimum. But on your own personal level, if you really are not going to the market, but because you want to go and roam, you tell the policeman that you are going to the market, you personally are increasing your risk. So there's a personal responsibility, there is a state responsibility, there's a community responsibility, which will be championed by the assembly. There is a personal domestic responsibility. President says that don't go to church. If you go to a restaurant, keep the strict protocols and all that. Even when you keep the protocols, having exposed yourself to a number more than 2, 3, your risk has gone up. So in all of these situations, we are looking at risk. It's a scale of risk. My risk is bigger than the one who is listening to us from their home. Because I've gone through my car, touched your door, come here interacting. That is raised risk. It doesn't mean Okoboy will get corona, you at home will not get it. You go to only one place in the day, that might be, so it's about probability. So just to educate our guys. Now, I think the alleviation program, the president says directed the minister to have a corona alleviation program that comes to about 1 billion Ghana cedis. And like Doc said, it's an opportunity to capture some data. And I think when the bill comes to Parliament, there's going to be an exemption bill. We have an act now, 1012, which is the imposition of restrictions bill. The exemption is to determine what is exempted or is allowed, and that will include the movements, the judiciary, and all that. I think that's where the detailed list would come. The detailed list will come. So the president's statement is more or less a theme. It gives you the broad framework and all that. Look, people have said that, why did you wait 48 hours before starting the thing?
Yes, that's going to be my next
It's very critical. Anytime you pass a law and it takes off immediately when people have not prepared, you've also been unfair to them. You see, I got messages from some folks who said, should we stop things because they will lock down? And I said, calm down, there's no need. Now, immediately you announce this measure, there are some who genuinely work. They say they prefer, let's say you have a doctor who works in Sunyani, he's in Accra. He needs some 24 hours to relocate to his natural setting where he will be of use. But what you discourage people from is movement because they think they are running away from risk.
Which is what we have.
Yeah, so we need to do education. And remember, every law or policy comes continuously. You have to do education, stakeholder, and so this will continue. The president met TUC, met market women. It was to sensitize them, to prepare their mind. But you don't end there. Even when it has come into force, you have to move. This morning, I listened to one local station. They said those in Koforidua have given warning that Accra people should not move to their zone. You see, the point is simple. Accra is not our lifestyle that has made us an epicenter. It's because we have an international airport. So if you understand epidemiology, it's not like your risk is greater in Accra. It's because they came here. Those who have settled in other regions, they already. So it's possible in Koforidua, you might have more residents with COVID than here. The principle is simple. Even with the towns that have been mentioned, let me encourage all those listening. If your community has not been captured, behave as if you have been captured. Because the principle is that we've been mentioned because our risk is higher, because cases are here, epicenter. But only one case in Wa, one case in Obuasi, one case in, let's say, Sola. You can be the person who gets it from the one case. And we would, an increased probability, will still be negative. So in these 2-3 weeks, do your own personal limited movement. Don't say, someone said, check the list for me. I'm at Afienya. Are we explicitly mentioned? If you take to such a behavior, what it means is that you don't understand the principle.
And you see that I even told you that just one infection, okay, transmitting at just a rate of 2, okay, in 6 days you would have in 6 days you have about 50 people infected, and it will go on like that. So the advice is giving is very important.
In fact, the list came because to some extent we are considering an elevated risk or epicenter where cases have come, but really the risk is everybody has a measure of risk. For now, they've listed those whose risk is up. But someone with an elevated risk can be negative. You with the lowered one can come out positive. It's like hypertension.
Okay.
They'll tell you if you're obese, if your age is advanced, if your father had some, your risk is higher. But you meet someone who is very obese, the father had, the mother had, and still negative. And you with no history can get it. Now, in my final words, you see, in all this, the personal precaution is very grave, it's important. And I have told people that when you look at the total picture for COVID-19, the principles that get the protocols are good for other diseases as well. So going forward, everybody should take these principles as a lifetime principle. In fact, none of the prevention steps, especially for the washing of hands, for keeping a distance, and for not touching it, all of them are not for COVID. They are general medicinal principles for preventing disease spread. So because we don't know 100% the virus, it's still being studied. What we've given you are general, that would save you from cholera, to save you from typhoid, it will save you. In fact, 70% of germs, you save yourself from these principles. So COVID-19 deserves, like I say, your attention and your preparation, but not apprehension and panic.
All right.
It must press those two buttons, preparation and attention, but not your panic button or your apprehension button. Everybody is at risk. Our risks differ. So don't say, I have not been listed. I know people who are checking carefully this morning whether they've been listed. And then and let me also add that those who are being managed currently in the country, majority are in their homes. I thank God for the picture or the pathophysiology of this condition. About 90 to 95% normally have mild symptoms which can follow in their homes. A few come to the hospitals. We admit that as a country, we are taking the opportunity to increase our level of preparedness as well as our general infrastructure for health. And remember, when you get more ventilators, it's not only COVID patients who benefit. If corona goes, people with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthmas, lung cancers, all of them going forward, they will be comfortable when they visit our hospitals. And guess what? The isolation centers that are being built, anytime there's an outbreak, whether it's bacterial, viral, or parasitic, you still can use them. So there's some small.
I'll come to you from 11 on the health profession itself and all those things, But Papo, let me just take your quick thoughts on this.
Oh, I think that you must first and foremost pray for the
But you should issue a disclaimer first. That is not part of the 13 COVID-19 initiative.
No, he's not.
we must pray for the president. It is not easy being in the shoes at this time of the crisis. And I think if Ghana has never been on a war footing, we seem to kind of appreciate what it takes to be at war. We are at war with a disease, and we must have a nationalistic approach towards it. So, despite whatever differences, in approach that we may want to advocate, we must have a very nationalistic approach towards how we communicate certain things. I would say that I can understand why the partial lockdown and the approach that is being used. If you are a business owner and you pay taxes and you do business in this country, from March when this thing started, you would start to feel the effect of it. The hotels are on their knees,
Lots of cancellations.
They are actually on their knees because once there's no international travel, the airlines are not patronizing their hotels, the rental services. Everyone, in fact, I could say the economy is almost like 50% as it is. Then you have government budget, which is a projection of income that they would have gotten and all that. And this income comes from when you buy fuel, when you pay the trotro driver pays his tax at the toll booth, at the stations. When people still not to get the idea that it is your taxes, your daily taxes that run the country. So when your government cannot even get taxes, you understand, the government is on his knees. The president may not tell you, but part of the things that he is, and part of the demeanor he is showing is because he's under financial pressure. Your ports, you are not earning any income from the ports as it is. You are not earning any income from the airports. Remember the airport, Terminal 3, for example, has a loan facility on it that you are paying. So for the period, you are not paying. And other countries, fortunately for them, have a stimulus plan. We have countries where they can afford per household. You see, that's the difference. That's why the lockdown is not just, sometimes when I'm sure Doc is advocating lockdown, the president is looking at things not just from the medical advice he's getting, but he has his finance minister sitting close to him. He can't afford those kinds of lockdowns but when you confront him with the figures as you have, he has, I honestly wouldn't want to be in the president's shoes, because you have a situation where you have the medical advice coming in and you have the financial advice also coming in, that if you do a complete lockdown, you are going to zero. Number one, we don't have an economic stimulus package as other countries are. They don't just announce a potential stimulus package because they are not now going to look for the money. The money is there. So when they announce the stimulus package, they are able to tell you per household, you are able to give 1,000 this. If you have one child, we'll give you this. And then they come to businesses. And with businesses, the reason why they can afford to let persons go home and limit movement is that the business owner is going to be given money, one for salaries that he was going to pay. So he can afford to tell his persons to stay home. The taxes or profits he otherwise have made, he will get something on that one as well. In Ghana, there's no business that has been given money directly.
Yeah, but we do know that there are also certain interventions that have been made. The BOG have put in place things. The telcos have put in place things.
If you're a business owner and you have tax, you have a loan you are going to pay, you understand? You must generate economic activity in order to pay that loan. So the fact that you've been given a moratorium on pay, yes, it's a kind of relief, but you are not economically, you are not moving. So let's bear with the system. Let's pray that this particular cycle or this particular circle is short-lived, and that we are able to get over it. But I think that as Ghanaians, this disease may also have its blessings in the sense that it has changed our lifestyle. Gone are the days where we took certain basic things for granted. You walk into every place of meeting or every shop or whatever, and people will insist that if you've not washed your hands, you cannot enter. We never had that. And I think that, as Dr. Okobo was saying, it should be, in fact, I would advocate legislation that we should legislate this. We should never go back pre-COVID-19 where we were not having the Veronica bucket should now become one of the mandatory things at all places. You know, Veronica buckets, hand sanitizers, what have you. Everything that we are doing now, please, government, pass law. Let's maintain it. And then the spraying of the markets. This should be once a month. This should not be a one in a $1 million affair, once the lifetime affair. Let's make it part of our lifestyle. If we do that, perhaps even if there's an outbreak somewhere, next time we may not feel it like we are feeling now. I'm also appealing to the government to look at an ECOWAS and AU approach towards this thing. I think that we need it because you see, one of the things that perhaps if even though we are fighting this, and this is a continuous fight, if we have an ECOWAS approach as well, we can pool resources together. Because honestly, no country on its own can survive this thing working as an independent unit. We've closed our borders and all that, but we need an emergency meeting of our. If we don't need to physically meet, but an emergency meeting of ECOWAS to deal with this thing as an economic issue. You understand? Can we have a fund? We are not now looking for any external help per se. Let's put, if it's even $1 million per country, let's put something together as an emergency fund to ease the crisis that we are in. Because look, the financial implications of what is going on, and I can understand why there's a partial, lockdown. Let's pray that, as Doc is projecting, we can bring the brakes down, stop the spread as it is, but let's maintain the protocols. I plead with everybody. The hand washing, the social distancing, and all those things must become a lifestyle for at least the next. How many months, Doc? How many months do you recommend?
For the rest of our life.
So that we can stop this
right.
thing.
Let me take the final words on this particular one from Dr. Abeka on the price hikes. I'm getting a lot of messages on that as well. Perhaps we have had some clear messaging on this, because there are those who have the opinion that this is what market forces are like. So let's allow them to do what they want to do. But it also looks like there's a lot of profiteering.
Yeah, I think that sometimes price movements, people would say, is basically the forces of demand and supply. But I think that one of the things that really affects price movement is also asymmetric information. Okay. So one of the ways to deal or suppress the issue of asymmetric information would have been upfront communication. So for instance, if we put, let me give you a simple example like the one for hand sanitizers.
Yes.
And people, this morning I went somewhere, I used the sanitizer. I told myself, no, this is not a sanitizer. Because a proper sanitizer should dry within seconds. But this was still on my hand sticky. So I could feel maybe this is some starch with some alcohol. Okay. But the point is that this sanitizer thing, I thought that probably what should have happened is for maybe the state to have communicated that what is going to happen is that we are going to have these sanitizers. And so we're going to bring this quantity onto the market. Once people know that the thing will be there, they will not just go and clear the shelves. We could also put in place measures to ensure that people are punished for wanting to clear the shelf. So, for instance, you can arrange with the sellers. If you buy 2, maybe it's 10 cedis. If you buy 4, instead of it being 20 cedis, it's 50 cedis. In that way, you are actually prevented from what? Buying what you don't need. So we can have all manner of ways, but like I've said, at the end of the day, it is to ensure that people know that when they come the next day, they will have the commodity there. Just like I gave you the example, my wife wanting to rush to the market. I said, don't worry, we'll go Tuesday, you would have it. And I would imagine she would go and clear several things from the market today if I hadn't given her that advice. Sure, and so that's what I'll say about that. But to end, let me say this thing is basically in our hands. Okay, it's not just everybody talks about government, but as citizens, we have responsibility. I gave you the example that in China, the citizens decided to work hard. And in 2 weeks, if you look at the graphs that I showed, here is the graph. In 2 weeks, the transmission rate started dipping. And China is dipped to 0.3. From somewhere around 3.9, they've dipped to 0.3. And they're still maintaining the measures and releasing step by step, because the whole plan is that you must stay at 1 or below 1. Okay, so we have responsibility to make sure that we follow through with these measures so that we can push the transmission rates down. And maybe by 2 weeks, we might be better. For instance, like with the projections that I made, if we don't do that, what it means is that 30% decrease that I talked about may not happen. It may just be about 15%, and we may escalate our figures. And at that point, they may have to come in with a hammer hitting hard. So we have personal responsibility to make sure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Accra and Kumasi is a health economist at the University of Ghana. Let me just take some messages from Twitter. We'll take another break, and then I'll go to Dr. Koboy and Franklin Kujo, president of Imani Africa. So Otis Rabia Sadat says, sleeping mode activated from Monday. Thank you, Mr. President. Self-quarantine starts for me today.
It's even good for rest.
And then Ifo Coolest says that, good morning. Deducting from the president's address, can we assume now that there are confirmed cases in Kaswa since it's now been declared a hot spot? This is Kafui from Kaswa. No, you cannot make that deduction. Otis Rabia Sadat says thanks to the president for donating his 3 months salary. Peter Hyde, I heard the president say no individual movement unless you need to use the public toilet or are going to buy essentials. What proof should one have in place for that? I think we've discussed that. Obrimponya Ampofo also asked a question on the 48-hour space in between the announcement and implementation. I think Dr. Okoboy has already addressed the need for that. Efo Delali says, what about GRA? Are they also exempted from this, seeing that deadline for some payments are on Tuesday, after which penalties will apply?
They have given a waiver.
Yes, yes, he says, is there going to be a waiver for those payments like VAT, CIT, and PIT, among others? So that's why we require a lot of information. So I'm hoping Kojo Opon Kroma and his team will put out a lot more information, because some of the questions you might think they are quite basic, but people really need, these things to move on. Leo Master Ernest, I think your question has been answered on how we arrived at the name novel coronavirus. In fact, Dr. Koboy has addressed that as well. Thomas Citizen says, I really love how doctors are breaking things down so that we understand. I want to know from the Minister of Information, can someone walk to the roadside and withdraw money for mobile money vendors? Yes, you can. Eugene P.Y. Ahuma, my issue is that I'm yet to process my salary for my staff. Will banks open on Monday? Banks will open on Monday, Eugene. Edu Kweku Daniel says, if food service and beverages are permitted, does that mean restaurants, food vendors, and drink sellers can work? That's a difficult one, but I don't think they're on the list, so they might have to close down for that one. Let's see. Kobe Royal says, I'm praying for all passengers on these packed trotros so that they don't infect themselves in vehicles and carry the virus to their villages and their hometown. So these are the messages that have come in on the hashtag The Big Issue. We'll take another break. When we return, Franklin Kujo joins the conversation. Welcome back to The Big Issue. Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa, is here. Dr. Accra Nkrumah has taken his leave. Still here is Dr. Addo Kobwe, Member of Parliament for Lejokuku, and also here Nipapo Samuado, private legal practitioner. And you will understand why Nipapo is here in about 15 or so minutes. But Franklin, finally the partial lockdown has been announced. President says for the next 2 weeks, we'll study the situation and then other measures will be taken on. In addition to all that has been done this week with the market disinfestation and all that, what have you made of Ghana's COVID fight?
Well, good morning to you and my friends here, and indeed everybody who's watching and listening. Well, these are really sobering times. They are not normal times at all, and I do not, again, as Nice suggested, nobody wants to be in the shoes of a leader. No global leader is happy having to, shepherd this process. It's a very difficult one, especially for a government in our part that would have touted that, look, we took the economy from certain depths and that we've managed to somehow resuscitate the economy. We are plateaued, we are going to take off. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a virus 10 thousands of a diameter in a diameter in millimeter, of a millimeter in diameter, comes to, totally dislodge everything. It beggars belief, really, as to what exactly this virus is trying to do. I mean, the virus is not a human being, but you can tell that if there was any pernicious evil of any kind, this is a clear definition of it. And so for the steps that have been taken by government, look, we needed to understand that the lockdown that was clamored for by many had to be done in phases, because as Ni and Doc and everybody else has suggested, this economy is not one that it's not the envy of the developed world, and even they are having to face all the reality of how devastating this virus can be. So for me, I welcomed it, even though I think it was a bit late. I do think that the lockdown, especially when it came to international travel, should have come 2 weeks earlier. It shouldn't have been March, it was 11th or 12th?
12th.
Yeah, it should have been March 3rd. But as Dr. Kobwe suggested, the malleability of the leadership of this country have now understood that, look, some people may have slipped in. And even if you think that cases are not being picked up, it is important that you do test. I think that's the global standard, the WHO standard. And so I think that this process really is one that is very difficult for the government to do, but indeed has done. And I think the best we can do is to obey. I also understand that directives must be issued in such a way that is understood. Because for me, when I watched almost 3 times what the president said, and by the way, I've been watching City TV all this while. City TV does great programming, by the way. I mean, it's the only time, 2 days ago, that I decided to watch. And I watched it for almost 6 or 7 hours, non-stop. I just want to say that no, and I watched it 3 times, both on City and other places, and I still felt that we needed some clarity, because especially people may have questions, as clearly the messages have shown. While I say that we should be thankful for these very important messages, I think it's also important that we do not seem to be acting, or we do not appear to be acting in such a way that will roll back certain civil liberties. And I'm saying this because I've cited an executive instrument which has to do with the setting up of communication systems. I don't know if you guys have seen it. The EI, and it brought back memories of what the NDC wanted to do when they wanted to introduce this bill to intercept missed calls and phone records and what have you. So much as I understand that we are not in normal times. I mean, there is. But, I mean, as eternally suspicious as a civil society actor should be, not even civil society actors, every citizen should be suspicious of his government, by the way. That's the only price for eternal. It's only, the price is eternal vigilance. I worry that if we do not take care and those things stay on after the COVID fight, they may be exploited by certain actors. And because we are dealing with COVID, I do not want to stray into the other possible areas that I know that I've already shared publicly, by the way. But I will not speak on this. But I just want to say that as a libertarian, I'm also increasingly getting worried. And it's not just for Ghana, but other places as well. I mean, you just related the story of policemen.
It was yesterday on live television. 7 p.m. curfew, 5 p.m. they were blasting people.
You see, the thing our psyche of
It's aggravated.
the psyche of some of our alphas that they think that this is common sense that you should know that 7 o'clock is about to, what are you loitering around? When they say, come on, let's hurry you up so that we can, because they are also exposed. Remember, they also, can catch it.
I mean, I think it's important. And the way these messages are communicated could also enrich the compliance. Was it the Ugandan president who has a very funny way of relaying his information?
Simple and straight to the point.
But the enforcement is not funny when they do it.
It's not funny, I mean, to the extent, the one at Sin, which is quite funny. Not that one. The one that they said for drunkards, they should be careful because when they drink, they spit. It was really funny. But look, we are not in normal times at all. And I shudder to think what the economic impact is going to be for this country. The 1 billion is welcome. I certainly think we can increase it if we stop the EC from doing its unintended registration. That's $150 million more we can get. So we need to mobilize money from everywhere we can. And that for me is what I'll say for now. But these are clearly not normal.
Thank you.
Times.
Now, quickly, Doc, so that I move on to the NIA issue. 2 matters. There are doctors on the front line. You oversee a hospital. You oversee the most important hospital in this country. Are doctors okay? Do they have all that they need? 1. And 2, on the matter of testing, the feel from the general public is, if I show up at a hospital and say, test me, you should test me.
I was about to ask that.
What is the protocol around that? I think that is one clarification you need to provide, because a lot of people are of the opinion or of the perception that hospitals are picking and choosing who to test in a time when perhaps everybody is at risk. So when anybody shows up and says, test me, test the person.
Well, I just wanted to ask also, that
yes.
If, for example, we have labs in this country that send samples outside to test, after you have some of the tests that you want to run, if they don't have the facility here, they do it. Is it possible that persons who want to voluntarily test can just walk up to these labs and say, take my sample, if the person can afford it?
Well, let me just jump in before Dr. Kubwe comes. The danger with that is that if we do not have national protocols, the danger we are picking up, some of the some of the media stories we are picking up also is that some of the kits may not be truly,
proper kits.
In fact,
get false readings.
Europol has advised that some of the kits. These are times when criminals would want to, produce counterfeit kits. And it's not strange. I think Spain bought quite a large number from China.
I read that.
And I think the Czech Republic as well.
No, it's just so that, you see, there's that advocacy for mass testing. So if, for example, the state may not be in a position immediately to do something, and some private sectors may want to, let's say, sponsor, and we already have systems in place where labs take samples out to test.
Or to the extent that they are manned by qualified...
So that whatever reports they bring may still run through whatever national protocols. I think the information, because basically what I feel is that the information that persons like Doc Dems are looking for is they need data. Which persons are, infected or not. So if they can even isolate one case out of this place and say that, look, you did voluntary testing and we have the results, they will be more than happy because they need the data to be able to isolate you and then start treatment. So that's just my thinking.
Doc,
that
quickly on those matters.
Yeah, I think, let me quickly say that the interventions, the lockdown, some call it partial, those who help with the enforcement, there are some basic things they should know or have. The first one is that when you meet anybody, you don't act straight away, you ask. Because if the fellow is going to get food, it's allowed. So there are most of them border on need and not want. So when you ask and it's more or less not need, it's likely to fall outside what is allowed. The second one is that when you meet anybody, you don't castigate straight away. You have to classify. If I'm a member of parliament, I'm part of the legislature. So classification is important. So you normally need some straight things that they can easily remember. And then the third one is that you don't encourage those who obviously are flouted the interventions. You actually enforce. So for security officers, you need to give them some simple takeaways. Ask before you act. And classify before you start your castigations or whatever. All right. Now, I also, forgive me, Nick Pako mentioned that government is on its knees and all that. Some of the descriptions are extreme. and let me be honest, the finance minister has been taxed. He's projected that our growth rate, we were hoping to do around 7 average this year. But we might do about 2.5 should Corona go the way it's going. And let me also say that all those countries, he mentioned that some countries, when they say they are going to use $1 billion, they have the money. Almost every country has some reserve, frankly, here. Is the extent. We talk about import cover, and what it means is that, assuming you are not doing any economic activity, you can take care of yourself for a number of period. And Ghana's import cover, the last time I checked, was about 3.5%, 3.5 months. So what it means is that even if we don't do anything, we will not go as in that. We can take care of ourselves for 3.5. Now, government could have gone into their reserves for this money. That IMF thing, some of my brothers talk about, and the World Bank, we were taking advantage of a facility which the whole world is trying to take advantage of, because it has 0 interest rate. So you can use it to close your gap. But like I mentioned the other time, we take money from our consolidated fund. And I can say emphatically that at any point in time, what you have in our consolidated fund is more than $100 million. So assuming we want to take all to save the lives of Ghanaians, we have money to do so. But no country says that I'm allotting $100 million and the next day gives it to the health minister. It means you are willing to even misappropriate, meaning if it was meant for another purpose, you can use it to save the lives of your people. And that's important. Now let me come to the doctors. Nowhere in the world do they have PPEs for every health worker that finds himself in the hospital environment. What it means is that when we are dealing with such an infectious disease, you don't give those, let's say the one on the gynae ward recovery, coveralls, the total one you wear. You don't need to go in the gynae recovery room, give every nurse there, let's say, a face mask and gloves. The point I make is that there are points where these things must be used. And so if you see any health worker working in a hospital wearing a coverall, something might be wrong with the person. Now, the point is simple. Nobody in Ghana, as we speak, has been asked to deal with a suspected case or confirmed case naked. Naked meaning not wearing appropriate gowns. We have appropriate PPEs for all those who have had to deal with suspected cases. Those doing the contact tracing, they don't go exposed. But this is the point. We don't have sufficient numbers for the modeling that has been done. When I say modeling, potential cases. So that's why the president said that we've imported about 350,000 masks, 17,000 coveralls, 70,000 goggles. You prepare for what lies ahead of you or what might lie ahead of you. But as we speak, the 137 cases plus the about 1,000 being traced, all those that are going to take samples around, they all go properly dressed. So just yesterday, someone told me that there's a lady in Kolebu at the ophthalmology unit where they see to eye cases who say that they don't feel safe because they don't have materials they can wear. The point is that if you go to the States, nobody in the ophthalmology unit has gowned coveralls. But if any case comes with an eye problem and their history shows that they are suspected, the ophthalmologist or the one seeing to the eye will gown appropriately. I was at Lekman last week. 2 weeks prior to my visit, I went there, I didn't wear face mask. But this week, last week when I went there, I wore the face mask because the curve is going up. We are having cases. So I prepared. I didn't wear gloves, but for each case, I used the sanitizer. Now, if you lift me from that OPD setting and tell me to go to a ward where a suspected case is being, I'll increase my preparation to wearing a coverall and possibly goggle. Mm-hmm. So the point I'm making is that it's true. The potential cases we can get as a nation, just like in the UK, in the US, nobody has enough materials for potential cases. But assuming all we'll get in Ghana is 1,000 cases being traced and 137 cases being managed, what we have is sufficient. But you are escalating because you are preparing for tomorrow. And I've said it before. Anytime you hear an outbreak in medicine, it means the occurrence of the disease has gone beyond the level that you normally deal with. So an outbreak naturally is like Gami Abakemokoju start. An outbreak has gone, once it is termed an outbreak, whatever infrastructure you have, it has gone ahead of your infrastructure. What you do is escalate and catch up. And as we speak, if you go to the US, even Germany, everybody, they are all increasing their logistics to meet with the virus or go ahead of the virus. So, in short, what we have for the cases we have now that we are tracing and dealing with might be enough. But nothing is enough for a pandemic that is new because nobody even knows its smoothness level, I put it. You don't know where it will plateau. As we speak, we have 137. It's possible by the time we plateau, as in our highest cases, we'll have 500 and then drop and this thing goes away. It's possible you plateau at 1,000. You plateau. Once you don't know where you plateau, you have to continue to, increase your, PPs. And please, if you are at Kibi Government Hospital, where I worked, you might not have the same quantities of PPEs as Rich Hospital because the epicenter is in Accra, in Kumasi, and a few places. It doesn't mean you should be ground zero with PPEs. You can have some. But that
is the situation some are reporting, that they are ground zero.
No. If anybody says they are ground zero, I'll not be surprised. If you have a health center, maybe 200 kilometers away from Tamale, what it means is that if you come to, let's say, 37, naturally 37 in their stock are more likely to have some significant level of gloves and face masks. Over there, they might have only one box of face mask. This is what has been their operational level for the past years before Corona. If they tell you they are ground zero, it's genuine. You must quickly give them some amount. But they should not say that let the distribution be what? Equal. It does not happen. Nowhere in the world do they give equal numbers. You look at the risk in terms of receiving patients. The frontline people, they should have more than others. And I agree with those who say scale up, give more. Look, Rich and Tema General, they are the places that we've targeted as isolation centers. And now Ga East. Ga East is
the new hospital.
Exactly. The backup, the second line is Kolebu, Police Hospital, Police Hospital, and Lekman Hospital, about 3 or 4. You have about 6 facilities that are first and second. They must be inundated with materials. And I mentioned that to the minister. They must have more than enough. They must bath in materials. So that even if you are the trauma unit, immediately you give a signal, they should give you a lot. If Kibi Government Hospital or Obuasi Government Hospital, a hospital that is outside the epicenters, say that their numbers are not overwhelming, that one I understand. But these facilities, I joined the call, they should be overwhelmed. I went to Lekma, thanks to McDan. They told me, Doc, we have face masks, but we wish we get more. And I was not surprised. Some are consumables. Ventilators are not consumables. But your face mask will finish no matter the quantities you bring. Your sanitizers will finish no matter the quantities. And your coveralls will finish. So the supply chain must be active. And for these ones...
Ventilators do we have in the country?
Oh, the ventilators we have, maybe I'll pick it at less than 100. But again, you see, you should be careful not to use your structural deficiencies to test your preparation for an epidemic. Because if structurally someone is better than you in terms of ICU care, all you have to do is to augment what you have. So if anybody says add more ventilators, I'm with the person. Especially when it's not a consumable. Because cases of lung cancer, there are many people who benefit. And for your information, some of the things we would buy today would add up to our health infrastructure. And that's why, although it's COVID, I am a little bit excited because all the cases who are chest symptoms, remember the status localis where action happens for COVID-19 is the chest and your upper respiratory tract. All those who have medical conditions that are related to this, today have an increased risk. If you're an asthmatic patient, for you, lock down yourself. If you're above 80 years, above 70 years, while your lung function and your kidney might not be like Okobo and Pakpo, try and lock down yourself. If you have any chest condition like history of heart surgery, your risk of getting a chest complication is high already before COVID. Lock down yourself. Today, lock down yourself. But tomorrow is good news for you because all the things we are buying to prepare, you use it in the future.
All right. Now, finally on the testing, and then I move to on the NIA. Why am I not being tested when I show up?
They use modeling for testing. Modeling meaning that if you test 1 million people and you're going to pick 10 cases that are positive, no health economist will tell you to do because the cost.
Maybe you need to. People assume that as soon as you show up, you get some freebies as well.
All right. So, my brother, the cost of testing, the time and energy of testing, the logistics of testing, you are not dealing with one disease in isolation. The health economists will quickly tell you what are the diseases you do with in your country. There's an opportunity cost. Any quantum of energy and logistics you put into COVID can negatively affect meningitis in the north, maternal mortality in the hospitals, pediatric care in the children's ward. So they tell you that if you test 1,000 and you are going to pick 10 COVID cases, it's not worth it. Wait until they show clinical symptoms and assist with recovery. So what is happening now is that even in advanced countries, they are discouraging wholesale testing because it sucks all your logistics. And if you are not careful, by the time you get a suspected or confirmed case, your kits have run out, your coveralls have run out, your mask have run out because you use those things also in testing. So if you have the opportunity, increase the margins for testing. Like now, remember before just a week ago, we were not testing contacts. If you've come into contact with a confirmed case, we were not testing you. Now the state is testing. It means we've increased our testing parameter. If you've come from Europe in the past 1 month or 2 months, just for coming from Europe, you might fall inside the testing. It means we are testing more, but we've not increased to the population, as in the general population. Look, if you are in Lejokuku, you live at Teshi Tribulel, you've not traveled before, none of your relatives has traveled, yourself, you don't deal with groups and all that, and you come to me that you want to be tested. The energy and resources that will be put on you would deny real people who need help. So testing is needed, but the level of testing should be considered. And please, in all this, it's about risk.
Yeah.
Forgive me for citing another case. There are people who have hepatitis. They land in our hospitals with liver disease, which takes their life. It's one of the viral conditions that are prevalent in Ghana compared to Europe and Americas. You know what? We've not had a whole countrywide testing for cases to help them now. The reason is simple. The money, the time you put in is better for you, unfortunately, because of the modeling, to wait until they show symptoms or to encourage them to voluntarily go and test. And the kits, there's reliability or sensitivity of testing. Remember, some of the kits can pick corona cases, but not COVID-2. Yes, being positive for corona does not mean it's the SARS-CoV-2. So already I've told you that some similarities exist between SARS-CoV-2 and MERS, which is also caused by another corona in the corona family. Yeah. The SARS we had is also in the corona family. So corona alone is already causing issues with all of us before this new one came. So if you pick you are testing someone, you are looking for some things which might cross with others. And so with all these things in place, you are restrained in testing. And lastly, I have told you that there are many in the world today who have COVID. They've not been picked. They will go through their craft and recover. They will not be picked. And they will be in the population. And so with that history in mind, health economists will tell you, if you escalate to the population, you might be wasting energy, which could be spent on dealing with cases and putting measures.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernard Okubo. And that is where we will end the COVID-19 conversation on the big issue. Let me take a few more messages, and then we are moving to the NIA.
But it's related.
In its own way, yes. So the information's one from Money Unifa, who says he's at home at Community 20 in Tema. He's already...
So what should we do?
He's isolating himself. He's telling us that. Godfred, the information service vans should be, by this time, in communities, creating awareness and educating the ignorant masses. Where are the vans? Our peculiar situation requires that we deploy these vans and others into the communities at dawn, morning, and evenings. We require a very hydra-headed approach to deal with this pandemic. Well, Money, you have a fair point. You have made a very strong point that by this time, because last week we were told the Ministry of Information was deploying people to basically every district to educate people. But I also see in one of the newspapers today an update that training of officers for information dissemination on COVID just ended, which was yesterday, addressed by, I think, the Deputy Information Minister, Pius Enam. So they are now going to be deployed. I think that's a bit late, but better late than never. So they should move them quickly. We should be seeing the vans. That much I agree with you. I haven't seen any of the vans around yet. Well, where I live, for instance. Good morning, City FM. This is Betty in California. That's why you said evening, Betty from California. With funerals suspended, we call on the president to call for a reduction or waiver of mortuary fees and electricity in both government hospitals and private funeral homes. I think COVID-19 patient who has also recovered should share his or her success story to give people more hope.
That's an interesting...
Prince from Kofodia says, I really love your program. Our market traders shouldn't be greedy and take advantage of this coronavirus to increase prices. I love your program. And I think, let's see. Member of Parliament for Ayawaso West Wuogon constituency, Lydia Sarah Malasan, is also pledging 3 months of her salary to support the vulnerable and needy in her constituency. So that one is also ongoing. Good morning, City. Listening to your discussions, I am compelled to add my voice. I believe what is going on are progressive developments. One, the president in his past address called for leaders of institutions to implement various forms of measures that include social distancing. I believe yesterday's address is to say essentials plus social distancing. Okay, so Ganyobi from Kuntunsi, please make your message a bit clear. Partial lockdown. We live in a country where people walk and drive to the bank just to check if they have got credit in their account. They will not agree to small fee for alerts. We are going to have the masses at home who just go to the bank when they are bored, exposing more people to the virus. Take another look at the banking aspect again. Well, when you are bored, think of COVID and stay home. It's as simple as that. Your fear of COVID should not override.
Probably raise the amount you can take over the counter.
Yeah.
So probably 2,000, 3,000.
Your fear of checking your bank account. Good morning, Godfred. Ask Doctor, which health facilities are COVID testing centers in the Upper East region? Roger from Kasugu. Daniel from Timpane district says, we share the border with Togo, which has no official entry point. People enter into any part in Ghana. We need your intervention. Well, Daniel, I'm not there. You live there. But if you also follow the news and what has been happening, we've done a few reports there. It looks like surveillance has improved at least there. They can do better, but it looks like surveillance has improved generally.
LPG is exempt, so why are we having it?
So let's see. K from Accra says, when will our ministers and MPs prove to us that they are serving as citizens by donating part of their salaries to fight things like COVID? I remember when Ivory Coast went into recession, salaries of the executive was cut by half, and they did well. So why not Ghana? We'll give it some time. Not everything needs to be made public. somebody might do a donation and not tell you about it. Does not mean that they're not doing anything. So it's neither here nor there. Some people like the public display. Some people just want to do things on the quiet. So let's not think that people are not doing things simply because they are not announcing it. Sadly, our fight against COVID is being led by politicians, by more politicians than health experts. The failures in the countries easily cited were largely due to wrong decisions led by politics. But let's clearly understand that this is not a telenovela. Corona is new, unknown, very vicious and very unforgiving. I am afraid we could be way behind the virus. Let's wake up. Well, right. It also depends on where you are coming from on this matter. But Kwame from Ashaiman, Newtown says, now that there's a restriction in town, please tell the EC to pay those of us who worked for it 3 months ago so that we can buy food stuff for our self-quarantine. So that is the last message that, okay, let's see. Please, if you meet someone who returned to Ghana from Germany on the 8th of March, showing no signs and hasn't been tested aside the temperature check at the airport, is it a cause for alarm? Doc, no, I don't think so.
Not really.
Yes.
The risk is elevated than someone who's not traveled, but a fellow might not be necessarily contagious.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then somebody says, I think we should also lock down inter-regional travels ASAP so that nobody goes out of Kumasi and Accra. Otherwise, by the time Kumasi and Accra cases go down, we may have other areas also escalating. Many people are leaving with the virus from these two cities to the other areas that are not in lockdown. Well, again, I hope Dr. Okoboy's explanation has gone down well with you. So that will explain that situation. Phil says, I came back to Ghana on the 14th of March, but I haven't shown any symptom. Do I still need to go and check, given that the president says everyone who came at a third must check? This is coming from Phil.
Yeah, they are looking at what's the word?
The destinations you came from.
No. Actually, they are testing
everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm sure he will be called.
All right.
Yeah.
So Phil, just bide your time. I'm sure they will call you. All right. So let me move on to my final issue, and it has to do with the NIA. So Nikpakpo Samuado represents 2 persons, Oliver McKevo and one other, who also went to the court to injunct the NIA from carrying out its mass registration exercise in the Eastern region. Now, don't forget that there was already an injunction in place from a suit that was filed by 30 persons in the region. So Nikpakpo's case was a different one. There was an expedited hearing, and a verdict came out yesterday. Nikpakpo, you can give us the details of what happened. You ended up being... You have to pay 3,000 Ghana cedis for wasting the court time.
Interesting.
But out of that, the NIA says they have indefinitely suspended the mass registration exercise anyway.
I mean, clearly, when my clients walked to my office and complained that they felt there was a real health risk in the Eastern region, especially when the president had just the day before giving the directives. Because once the directives kicked in, then we all became, quite conscious of the fact that social distancing and all those protocols had now become essential. Because before then, there was no need. There had been no requirements of social distancing and all that. So life was, as usual. Nobody was bothered about the NIA. NIA was doing this business. But once the president's directives kicked in, then people became conscious. If you say we should have social distancing, why should persons be packed like sardines at every given center? These machines require you to use your fingerprints on them, and you don't disinfect those machines. That's the unfortunate thing. You can't do that. So that's why the passport office, for example, is closed. And so the pictures and everything called for some form of action. So as far as we got our instructions, look, what is the fastest legal way of bringing this thing to a halt? So immediately we file a court process. One of the ways you can begin any court, issues is by either a writ, petition, or what we call our originating notice on motion or notice for purposes of human rights action. So we filed it. Now, traditionally, when you file these processes, the entity, once you have taken a matter to court, the traditional thing is that the entity will pause and then engage you in the court. And then after the person is done with whatever, or after the court has pronounced, if it goes in your favor, hey, you can continue. If it doesn't go in your favor, then you know that you have to stop whatever it is that is being complained of. But we know that there's that almost gray area that some persons take advantage of. When you file the process, unless they have seen an injunction application in front of them, they will still continue to do whatever it is that you are complaining of. So in addition to the writ, we added an application for an interlocutory injunction, which was to be heard on the 9th of April. So at least effectively, on the Friday, we had served the NIA with, on the Thursday, we had served the NIA with two processes. One was the originating motion, was the commencement action, and then we had added an application for interlocutory injunction to restrain them. And remember, the essence of the application was to restrain them from the exercise until this COVID-19 issue was over. That was basically the complaint of the applicants who were my clients, because there was no legal way you were going to say you are stopping NIA from doing its statutory duty normally. But within the corners of the fact that we had a crisis, the president had given directives, and the fact that they had their health at risk, and also remember the Ghana Medical Association had come out to advise that they should stop and cease what they were doing. That was directly from the Ghana Medical Association. SHRAJ itself came later, but Ghana Medical Association's advice even was the one strengthening yardstick that we decided that, look, if you are going to put the health of these people at risk, and from the initial pictures we were having, remember that it was the initial pictures that came out that then brought out a response that, oh, we have all of a sudden stopped the parking, and then we're now observing what we were calling social distancing. But the initial things that were happening at those centers were not what we saw later on by way of pictures from the NIA. But it was because of the actions that started and the public outcry. Then they decided that, look, let's try and, get this social distancing thing also on board. But right from the word go, our point was that to cease. And that was all that we were concerned about. Yes, there was a subsidiary issue of the fact that once the EC had brought out a notice that the Ghana card was potentially going to be one of the cards or one of the means of identification for purposes of being registered in any future voters register, then if they actually miss this, they potentially could also be touched on in respect of their right to vote. So then we put all these things together and ran it to the court. When we went to court, when the processes were filed on a Thursday and they were served, we were still wondering whether, after the interlocutory injunction, I personally thought this thing was over. Until the 9th, I've done what I was supposed to do. Then we got a statement from NIA that despite the fact that they had been served with all these processes and they had knowledge of these processes, in their opinion, they were discharging their statutory function, and so they were still going to continue. So it meant that we had to up the pressure one more time. So in the morning of Friday, I insisted that if by 12 o'clock we still were getting reports, because my clients kept sending me pictures and everything, I said, no, this isn't possible. You'll be served with the originating motion, you'll be served with the interlocutory injunction, and especially dealing with the fact that the head of the institution is a lawyer and all that. Why would they risk? Because then you potentially were going into areas of contempt. Because having been served with all those processes, you cannot normally be, even if you take any legal advice, every lawyer will tell you, you are running dangerous grounds if you decide to proceed whilst you've been served with all these processes actually mean that you must hold your hand. So if you actually want any relief, then just as the Deputy Attorney General did, you probably would want to abridge time to have the matter heard quickly so that you will be free to do whatever you want to do. So on Friday morning, I granted an interview. I said, if by 12 o'clock, we still were having reports of they continue the exercise, then we would increase the tempo, then we would actually cite the management officers for contempt.
Yeah.
By 12 o'clock, we still had evidence, this time not just reports, evidence, that despite the service of all those documents, they were still continuing with the exercises and were claiming that they were now observing the social distance protocols. So I filed the contempt application.
Oh, okay.
It was after the filing of the contempt and the service of the contempt application that we had a ceasefire. So we had a firm statement from the NIA saying that they were suspending all actions, and that in recognition of the fact that there was a pending action in court, they were now respecting the court processes that had been served on them. So whether it was now coming to their attention but I knew that once the contempt went, because even after the contempt, I still had calls coming that, are you sure they are going to respect the said process? But by 3 o'clock, because in fact, if they had gone on after the contempt, that would have been insane.
But fast forward as to what happened yesterday.
So we go on to have these processes served. Then on the Monday, another group of people, this time 30, then we went on notice. We filed our interlocutor on notice. The rules also allow that when there's an emergency, you can go ex parte. That is, you do without notice to the other side. You file the processes, you don't tell the other side that you are, but you are going to the court based on the process that you filed. The court can give what we call emergency or interim orders, and then ask you to repeat the application on notice to the other side. So we chose to go on notice.
Yeah.
The other 30, led by another set of lawyers, decided to go first ex parte. So on the Monday, they obtained the emergency order, the interim injunction order, which is operative for 10 days. So effectively, now we had, even by virtue of the notice we had served by our motion, the NIA had held its hand. They will say, yes, it was only because they got the interlocutory, but I know it's because they had the contempt application in addition. Then, when on Monday the court had given the interim injunction order in the other separate case, then it meant that effectively we had two, one on notice, one actually an order itself, which meant that the NIA clearly couldn't operate.
Okay.
So on Monday, we were served by the Attorney General with 3 processes. Mm-hmm. Their response to our interlocutory injunction, their substantive response to our main motion.
Yes,
I'm coming. Just give me like 2 minutes. And then they were also served with an application for an abridgment of time, which is basically that they wanted, instead of the 9th of April, they wanted our case to be heard on an earlier date and then ruled upon quickly so that the NIA could go on with whatever they were doing. When we got to court for the abridgment of time, we felt that, look, once there was an interim order already in place, there was no point in pursuing this application for abridgment. But hey, the court ruled that, look, it wanted to hear the interlocutory application the next day. So on the day that we did the interlocutory abridgment application, we were served with NIA's own documents now. NIA had their own lawyers. So now NIA served us with their own documents. And what was instructive was, there was, on paragraphs 26 and 27 of the NIA's affidavit in opposition, they now brought it to our attention, and I want to read 27, that the first responder, which was NIA, had closed the registration and issuance of NIA cards in the Eastern region at the close of Friday, the 20th of March 2020. This is paragraph 27 of the affidavit in opposition, which was served on us on the day we first went to court, which was for the abridgment of time. So I then went back with my clients to meet and said, look, number one, there's an already existing interim order, which is operating for 10 days. So effectively, your interlocutory injunction is a second application that you are going to repeat. It makes no sense. It's superfluous. Secondly, the entity says we have completed our exercise. Per paragraph 27 of their affidavit, we have completed the exercise. And now what we are doing is that we are going to open what we call district offices. After this COVID, whatever, anyone at all can come in and pick your cards and do fresh registration if you were not captured during the initial exercise. Because this was, I think, their first phase of operation. And that officially, Eastern region had come to an end. Now the point is, if the people have come to an end in the operation, what are you going to court to fight with them over? Because operationally, they had come to an end. So in essence, our case was now moot. Because We went to court basically to stop them from continuing with the mass registration. They say the mass registration is over.
But you tried to withdraw, you were not
So
allowed.
we filed. So it was, we were having only one day. So the next day, that morning, we filed our notice to discontinue. Unfortunately, because we only had a day in between, it was not physically possible to serve the documents except when you got into court. But I notified the Deputy Attorney General that we were no longer going, because based on these two factors, our case really, we could say it was not a live case anymore.
Okay.
You understand? Because the people one had said they were no longer registering.
So conclude on the charge, the sector. What does the
charge?
3,000 Ghana cedis.
No, that's the court's discretion. The court, when you take a matter to court, and the court says, well, it has dismissed your case. They have options of cost. The Deputy Attorney General did not take cost.
Okay.
It was the NIA lawyer that said that the court should award cost. The court has awarded cost. The NIA can decide to implement the cost by going to enforce it or not. But at the end of the day, my clients are very satisfied that, but for their intervention, that's the thing. NIA had planned to close, initially from their general timetable, to close the Eastern region on the next week. You understand? On the next week.
I'm ending, Papu.
You understand? On the next week. But because of the intervention of my clients, that exercise came to a halt.
Okay.
And for us, that is all that we wanted.
All right. Let me just read the 18 hours ago.
You just read.
No, from the NIA Twitter handle.
They sent another thing.
Well, they've actually done a full press statement.
Yes, I'm just reading this one from the Twitter. I can't read the full press statement. Indefinite suspension of the mass registration exercise. The National Identification Authority announces the indefinite suspension of the mass registration exercise in the Eastern region until further notice. This decision follows a careful assessment of the registration exercise carried out in the Eastern region between Wednesday, 4th March and Friday, 20th March. The decision to suspend the registration follows a careful assessment of the exercise in the region so far. It also takes into account the current trend in the spread of COVID-19 in Ghana since the suspension of the mass registration exercise on Saturday, 21st March, following the service on the NIA of an interlocutory injunction application. The NIA welcomes the dismissal by the High Court of the interlocutory injunction application and the substantive suit. Nonetheless, NIA will continue to suspend its mass registration operations in the Eastern region until further notice. NIA will use the period of suspension to continue with its preparations towards the establishment of its regional, municipal, and district offices and arrange for the co-location of its registration services at some of its cognate institutions such as NHIA, SNET, DVLA, and Ghana Revenue Authority, among other responsibilities. So that is what the NIA is saying.
Just a second. I just wanted to add that the other case involving the 30 is still ongoing.
Ongoing, yes. Franklin.
Well,
finally, NIA says they've suspended.
One of the things that we've seen in our policy activism in the last decade and a half in this country is that there's a certain sense of some regulatory disrespect, if you like, or some the English word is not even coming. But what we've seen clearly is that regulatory bodies that believe that they are clothed with some powers, constitutional powers, sometimes act in defiance when commonsensically they should be doing things that are not obvious. People hide behind all kinds of constitutional clothing and then act in certain ways that defy some real... it's difficult for me because the object of...
politics today.
No, it's not even politics. The point is that, you see, policy making, there must be sound policy making in every serious country. And what I've seen, as I said so far, is that until compelled, usually by the same court processes, sometimes people do not act rationally. Look, Afarijan, for instance, I recall when I suspect he had been questioned as to how he conducted some aspects of the elections by the MPP, he was totally dismissive. You can go to court. You can do anything you want. By the time the court had grilled him, it was obvious that it wasn't easy just to say go to court. we are seeing similar scenarios repeat themselves. Talk about the EC. It's even broken the record. The NIA expected to know better. But for me, what stood out for me was when Scratch had to come in, probably on not even, I don't think anybody petitioned Scratch.
No. Mr. Whittle wrote himself.
And Whittle is one character that I think should be celebrated a lot. You know, and I was mortified because I said, wow, this is an interesting development. If Scratch understood the danger involved in having people mass register, I would have expected the CEO of the NIA, a human rights activist of that sort, in fact, a champion at it as well, should have even stopped the process even before he was urged on by others. So I cringe usually when people develop some obstinate behavior towards what ordinarily should be commonsensical. And I'm happy that this process has traveled the way it did, but it shouldn't at all. And I was also worried that the judge would have even awarded cost. There's another thing in our development. No, I think, you see, when civic actors take matters to court, and I recall these are personal experiences, sometimes even before the case is heard, the judge makes a comment that, well, be careful. If you lose out, it means you'll be surcharged. When the matters before you are of grave consequences if it went the other way around. And I think our judiciary should also grow. There should be activists. I'm hoping that there will be more activists on the bench. And I'm sorry, but it was a terrible ruling.
All right. Thank you very much. Dr. Kuboy, let's hear you quickly.
Yeah, but that's a lawyer. I mean, I'm reasoning to say.
The president has donated 3 months of his salary for the COVID fund. That's impressive. But for me, my sister Lydia Ayawaso said greetings to her. Very nice woman. She's dedicated 3 months.
In fact, I'm donating 500 cedis to pay.
Donate some. Yes. I think I'll do 1 month.
No, 3 months.
Everybody gets 11.
I'll split mine. 500 for aiding the lawyers to pay the.
And I'm doing 1 month out of respect for the president. If your boss does 3, you also don't do 3. Because you know what? You see, bottom line is that if Franklin, I want to be frank with this discussion. If Franklin,
you have 2 minutes to be frank.
Yeah. If Franklin says that NIA should stop because they've increased the risk of people, I know he's coming from a point where he's not prejudiced. My brother, I'm being honest, I'm being frank.
Yes, go on.
The NDC
has a fair point.
They had a prejudiced position that they don't want registration should be done.
No.
Please, I was quiet. I was quiet.
He has 2 minutes.
He's making an unfortunate. My profession as a lawyer and a politician.
You like to make his point.
I beg you. Yes.
I never tell you are a doctor at the same time you're a politician.
It's okay. 2 minutes.
And then there was a clear connection between the cards and registration and new registration. That it will be one of the documents to be used. And they wanted to have a connection. They believe that, if you suspend the registration, a lot of people don't have the cards.
You suggested that the ruling made by the judge was political.
Why are we jumping to conclusions for him?
So the point I'm making is that some people had motivations that also were part of journey. But bottom line is that NIA tried to operate in a way that would reduce risk. And in the courts, look, he read some paragraphs. When you look at paragraph 21 in the ruling, they mention the fact that NIA showed evidence they had given supplies of sanitizers and all that.
You actually believe this?
Please listen. You need patience to listen. So you had myself, I would have taken the option of not having any risk at all as a suspending registration. Exactly. They tried an option of mitigating what? Risk. What did the courts do? And what happened in the courts should teach us a lesson. That it's not always important and necessary to go to the court. Sometimes engage. You see, courts are adversarial in nature. Now the ruling that came slapped you with, charges. And actually, the judges gave points to undo or throw away your arguments. But even in, please, and that's what happened. This is factual.
Let him speak.
Despite the ruling, the NIA says that I'm still going to suspend. You know why? Because they've listened to voices of reason, like frankly, like everybody.
But why didn't they listen to
reason? No. The point is that I've mentioned your arguments you made, they were shut down. So that in the face.
Paco, let him speak.
Okay, let him speak.
You spoke for 14 minutes.
No, but
look, there are two bodies in this country that I hardly disagree with: the GMA and the Ghana Bar Association. When GMA issued a communique that NI should stop, more or less I agreed with them. But the lesson we've learned is that sometimes you get the same results without going through the stringent adversarial processes of our court system. You've been charged today as to speak. You could have gotten better results without all these charges. Yes.
Thank you very much. Alright, let me take some messages. Alright, leave Paco calm down. Let me read my messages. Leave Paco. Let me read.
But he adopts something.
Gentlemen.
You stop.
Gentlemen. Gentlemen.
Let me read messages. The same result without any charge.
I think we need to educate people more on the virus to prevent the fear. I didn't know that Corona was different from COVID-19. Thank you, Dr. Koboy. More education on the virus.
He says corona, on the Corona family.
Yes.
He didn't say Corona is different.
Says because of a little headache or cough. Let me see a few more messages. Okay, people are very happy with Dr. Koboy this morning. Somebody asked whether Dr. Koboy says Dr. Koboy is very good.
When he gets infected with this.
Let me read my messages. I'm enjoying his education. Somebody's also asking whether Koboy you're a lecturer, and because you've explained these things very well. It's a laudable Musa Sani Osmanu. Okay, I'm not going to read your message, Musa Sani Osmanu. Let me go to the WhatsApp board and take a couple of messages. The digital platform e-banking of GCB is not working. In this era of COVID-19, it is not good. This is Tinero from Hohoi. So GCB,
it's a temporary
please look into that. Sam from UK says, please ask the judge who ruled in favor of the NIA whether he's observing social distancing. All right. Raz says, please, there are too many people going into town because of the pending partial lockdown. That is too much risk. Let us intensify the education on the implications of the lockdown. Well, that is all time will allow us for. My name is Godfrey Akoto-Boafo. A big thank you to Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa, Dr. Bernardo Koboy, Member of Parliament for Lojokuku, Nikwaku Addo, a private legal practitioner. And earlier on in the show, we also had Dr. Accra and Kumasi, health economist at the University of Ghana. Stay safe, observe the rules, stay responsible. Let's protect ourselves.
And keep the distance.
Keep the distance.
Wash your hands.
Have a good weekend. Yeah.